All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Roger Ver with a truly inspirational message. And, you know, he said that he really likes things that just work. So do all of us. Speaking of things that work, you guys really loved Pranav's live masterclass. Social media really loved Pranav's live masterclass. And just in case you couldn't see it or it sped by too fast, please don't worry, because we're going to have a recording of it for you, maybe even potentially slowed down, and we'll put it on Brella.
We
Isn't
will,
that
so
right?
you'll be able to access that a little bit later on. So we're going to get Pranav to do that for us once again, and in super detail. It's going to be amazing.
So now up next we have a panel, and I suspect that it's a panel that all of you have been waiting for.
It's going to get crazy up here. It's literally going to get crazy.
It really is. We've got loads of fantastic speakers, and what we're talking about is the entirety of the potential of the Fantom ecosystem. So, ladies and gentlemen, how about you set us off with a round of applause, please? Give it up.
Woohoo!
This is Fantom. We're pumping. Fantom on fire, not letting the energy flag. All right, so now, when you have a panel, the first order of business is to start bringing up
Your
our panelists. So, go for it.
So first up, we're going to have CMO of the Fantom Foundation, Simone Pomposi.
Come on up, Simone. And joining him is the DeFi architect and creator of Fantom Foundation, Cronje.
Welcome up, Andre. Andre! Calling Andre. There he is.
Hello, Andre. Coming in.
And up next, we've got Director of Asia Operations, Fantom Foundation, Sam Harcourt. Hey, Sam.
Hello, Sam. Ladies and gentlemen, give Sam a round of applause, please. And also, keep that applause going for our next panelist, the CEO of FTM Community Alert, Austin Rampart. Yeah.
And he's back once again. We love him so much. CIO of Fantom Foundation, Michael Kong.
Come on back, Michael.
He's going to be out here all day, every day.
We love seeing him. Every time you
Amazing.
come up, Michael, it's brilliant having you. It's brilliant having all of you. But of course, there's a key ingredient missing. Ladies and gentlemen, we still need a moderator. And on that point, put it together for the star of the show, the managing director of Quantum FinTech Group. You all know him. You all adore him. Harry Yeh.
The star? These guys are the stars. Come on. Oh, God. Hey, guys. Everybody. How you doing, guys? Ooh, I got my Herman Miller chair here because I didn't want to sit on the stool. You guys like these? I bought 50 of them just for the conference so that you guys can sit in this thing for 24 hours. It acts like a bed, too, so. How you guys doing? Yeah, so this panel, unique. We didn't really have much time to prepare. I got one question in, so I think I'd like to, kind of have everybody at least introduce yourself, kind of your role with Fantom, and then from there we'll kind of go in a little bit more questions. So I guess Michael, obviously start with you.
Hey everyone. So I'm Michael, CEO of Fantom. Kind of started with Fantom from the very early days in 2018, and I think have come a long way, especially with like Andre's help, I have to say. So it's really exciting to be here at the first developer conference, and looking forward to meeting the rest of you guys that I haven't said hi to yet. So thank you very much.
Hey everyone, my name is Austin Ramp. I am the founder of FTM Alerts. We are a social media platform. Initially the goal was to give projects that we're building on Fantom just kind of like a soft landing, introduction to the community. What we've ended up doing is kind of bridging the gap between the developer world and the community.
Hi everyone, my name's Sam Harcourt. I joined back in 2019. My role is specifically around business development, but I just help out where I can. Recently I've been meeting some great community members, and it's really exciting watching this growth and watching everybody build. Can't wait to see where this all goes.
Hey, Andre Cronje, nice to meet you all. I develop on and off sometimes when I feel like it. Mostly breaks, people really shouldn't use my stuff. Yeah, that's me.
And hi all, I'm Simone Pomposi. I'm the CMO now of Fantom. I really don't care much about roles, but it's thanks to this man next to me that brought me to Fantom about 2 years ago. And I'm very grateful to him, very grateful to Fantom, and super excited to be part of this journey, and thanks to Harry as well.
Awesome. All right, so I'm going to ask some questions. I think people are probably more curious. So I'll start off with, where was that spontaneous combustion? So look, some of you guys weren't involved with the ICO at the very, very beginning. So at some point, you guys had to come together. So I think it started, Michael and then Andres. Could you guys talk a little bit about that, kind of how that relationship kind of first started, how you guys really got to know each other?
Yeah, so it really started, I think, I think May 2018 or June 2018 was the first time I met Andre, and he kind of like found Fantom like through his networks, and back then Fantom wasn't really a good project, to be honest, and a lot of work had to be done. So we kind of had to work together to press a restart button, to develop the technology from scratch, to build up the team, and to just keep building like the core technology to begin with. Because as I said in my earlier presentation, like the core technology is what is the most important thing, because that's the foundation that allows applications to build and use the platform. So we spent like a number of years, well, not really myself, but more like Andre and a core team of developers building out that ABFT technology to where it is now today, where it's usable, and people are apparently using it to quite some extent. So it's quite really exciting to see something that came from just an idea to where it's actually now being used by a decent number of people.
Yeah, like I don't really think there was a big bang moment. I mean, Kong, I'm pretty sure you're the only one left of any of the original participants.
Yeah, that's true.
And I always have the saying that cause problems. And when you have problems, then people come together to make solutions and create something meaningful and something more. And the original Fantom team definitely did that. They created problem after problem after problem, and that created the opportunity, to need to solve those problems and put a team together that's capable of solving those problems. And yeah, there's that saying how the universe ends not with a bang but with a whimper. I think that's more accurate. Like it didn't have a big bang moment. It's been a long sullen sigh. But we're just gonna keep sighing, That's how we got here, and that's how we're gonna keep being here.
Oh. Andre, it's just you're one of the funniest guys I've ever met. Okay, so that's incredible. So you guys kind of started off. There's a problem. You're fixing a lot of problems. What made you guys decide to use DAG? I mean, everybody's talking about how blockchains are like the proper thing, and that DAG is not really a blockchain. Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
So if Kong doesn't mind me grabbing that first qualification, all blockchains are DAGs. So even Bitcoin is still a directed acyclic graph. So there's a bit of a nomenclature mix up there when people say DAGs versus blockchains. All blockchains are DAGs. The only difference is obviously how many leaf nodes you actually use. So blockchain uses 1-to-1. Ethereum has the concept of uncles, so at least there's n plus something next to it, even though that's not technically official. It's just easier to be allocated in the next block. And then what's commonly known as your DAG-based systems are just ones that use multiple nodes next to each other. But DAG is a structure. It's not the consensus. It's not the Sybil prevention mechanism. It is simply the ordering of the data. And I mean, even in Lachesis, which we do event blocks, we still take those event blocks and then put them in traditional blocks for purposes of, you know, easier RPC usage and easier integration and those kinds of things. And the team does need to stop me here because this is a topic I will fill that 37 minutes very easily on. And the main thing isn't actually the DAG technology. It's the original work that we build off of, which was the original published CCK paper, which is continuous concurrent knowledge. So it's this concept of you being able to reach a agreement in a group if you have enough knowledge about the people having knowledge in that group. I won't go into that too much, but anyone that is interested, feel free to bug me afterwards. This is something I do love talking about. That's the real breakthrough, you know, because it's this idea that okay, fine, let's assume we don't have a single directed graph, and let's assume we have multiple parts. How can we actually use these parts to agree that the snapshot they see is the same? And that's where Fantom speed comes from. It's this notion of, hey, we don't have to do 1, 1, 1. We can do as many validators as there are and as quickly as they can create event blocks at a time. All we need to do is to make sure that at some point they all agree about what it looks like. And that's why we've got this T+3 notion where, you know, after like blocks take about 3 epochs until they receive finality, which is also an amazing thing of obviously the Lachesis technology, is the fact that you actually have true finality, which you don't have in any other blockchain solution. But yeah, sorry, that's a bit of a ramble. So it's not particularly related to DAG as the solution. DAG is the structure, and all blockchains are DAGs. But yeah, the original concepts just came from, it's as technology advances. I always like to use the analogy that, you know, Bitcoin came out and proved that it's a fantastic technology, but it's a 56K modem. And we're kind of at a ISDN stage now, and eventually we're going to be at ADSL and fiber and satellite and you name it, and we're getting there and we're working towards that. But the main reasoning behind it was, okay, so Bitcoin is a DAG, but it has a single leaf node every single time. So what if you just had more? You know, why limit it at one? What if you could have multiple leaf nodes and just find a different way to agree? And that's really where it all came from. So it's the concept of how do we take something that's synchronous and how do we make it asynchronous?
Perfect. Thanks for that explanation. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about like community and what something I like to call the Fantom effect. I really believe that right now anything that Fantom ecosystem touches, and even with individuals like yourself, Andre, not myself, clearly almost everything that we're doing now, we're seen as kind of thought leaders in this space. Simone, Sam, and Austin, tell me a little bit about how that affects your guys' work, because you have to kind of get the message out. And Fantom's often been criticized as not spending enough on marketing, resources, this kind of thing. However, I found it to be extremely effective and organic. I just kind of like to get your guys' thought about kind of how Fantom Foundation itself really, sees the future kind of going forward now in terms of how they plan to kind of get Fantom, because Fantom's growing up now. I think we're top 28. It's like 20, 25 now. So there's a lot more eyeballs on the Fantom ecosystem now. Obviously this conference is a big part of it. So what plans have you guys discussed in terms of managing that growth in the future, marketing?
Okay, I'll start. So a few things. So one thing about marketing. Marketing is this word that people generally like to throw away, and when things don't go well, right? It's always when marketing. And in reality, it's a little bit more complex than that. And we can actually see it now that Fantom is getting this awesome, very organic traction, right? And we can see it, with people like Austin, created FTM Alert 6 months ago, and now, is really a sort of a lighthouse almost in the Fantom ecosystem. We can see how other projects, other companies are trying to achieve the same effect, not organically, and it's not working very well. So why is that? The reason, in my opinion, is quite simple. So Fantom was born in a bear market, right? So there were a couple of very tough years, and in those couple of tough years, there's been a lot of, lot of people in the community left, but a few people stayed, and those people are people like, some of you guys are in the audience, Devesh, Nassim, The Rabbit, and a few others. I mean, Chuo, really people that have stayed since 2018. And slowly, these people started getting together, and no matter what, they didn't care much about the price, but they were looking at the vision of what Fantom was building. And it was, I can tell you, it was very tough back then. I was one of the very first community members in Fantom, and the sentiment wasn't good. Of course, prices going down, people are losing money, and and the sentiment is very bad. Now, what those couple of years of hard times created, they created very, very hard community members, so to speak. Those very hard community members figured out a way, with their conviction, their passion, to bring in, it's a bad word, but it's kind of makes sense, to bring in more people and to convince them that Fantom was actually a very good technology, and which is now, it's happening, and everyone can see it. So I would say the community is, I define the community as the other half of Fantom. So we have a very, very strong technological background, right? So we talked about ABFT, we talked about how Fantom is different from most of other layer 1 networks, so to speak. But it's not enough, right? You can have the best technology, but if you don't have enough people that believe in it, then it's not going to go anywhere. And luckily, we now reached that network effect. So we had, as I said before, we had that first sort of group of community members that really helped creating a very solid foundation. And I would say, actually, thanks again to The Rabbit for creating that Fantom Kings group back in January, because I think there was a big, big catalyst for Fantom. It gave that core community members, we were about 70, 80 people back then, a way to act as one. And that was very, very effective. So I think that, I still think that that group was a big part of what happened in the following few months. And then, of course, everything that came after. So Zucoin, Spirit, Spooky, these were the first projects that came and started, leveraging Fantom and Fantom technology, that almost instant finality, those very, very low cost transactions that were not common back then, right? Right now, there's a few other alternatives, so to speak, and which I'm very open to, all layer 1s and all possibly layer 2 anyway. Scalability solution for Ethereum should be welcomed, because we're going towards a multi-chain and cross-chain future. There's not going to be a one chain that rules it all. It's not going to happen, at least at today's technology. And then I'm not a tech person, so maybe Andre and Con can actually fill in what I'm saying if I'm saying things that are not completely accurate. But as of now, we do need those other chains, and it's actually great. We're just beginning to see what's going to happen once those chains are communicating between each other. So I would say this is it, and thanks again to the community for being such a huge part of Fantom. So the community is really, really important, and it's been paramount in the growth that we're seeing up until now.
Great. Yeah,
sure.
Please.
Yeah, like you alluded to, Harry, we've seen such natural growth in Fantom, and that's kind of been our marketing campaign. I'd say that a good protocol on Fantom is worth 1,000 times any ad campaign can give us. So that's why we've been so technologically focused. Like Mike has said, build the tech, they will come. So I think the answer is, we're not so much focused on marketing, because we're more focused on bringing good protocols and good technology to our platform, and that in and of itself will show the world what we're made of. And it's kind of hard to do a marketing campaign when back in the day there weren't that many things to talk about on Fantom. So I guess it's kind of that snowball effect we see today, where The marketing's just being integrated as we grow because we're building a very cool system, and the community is something that everyone wants to be a part of. I know everyone here, you know, it's always good meeting you all, and I think the larger we grow, that's going to compound. So that is, I think that's a stronger marketing campaign: is build a good product, and people speak for themselves.
Yeah, so marketing's kind of a weird thing, right? Like when the chart's red, nobody's done enough marketing, you know, it's all your fault. Basically what they're saying is pump my bags. But you know, when price goes up, everyone's a genius, right? So there's been like this weird thing around Fantom, which I don't know if other chains have this, mainly because I don't go on them, but there's been kind of like this Fantom first spirit, right? I mean, no pun intended, but I'll talk about the spirit guys. So, you know, and Spooky too. Both of those guys have really kind of made it a point to not just, in a sense, promote their own projects, but promote the chain as a whole, right? It's been whatever's good for Fantom is going to be good for everybody, and that's been kind of something that has like permeated down into the community. And you know, when FTM Alerts first started, like my poor wife, she said to me, you know, I didn't sign up for all this, right? And it was supposed to be like a Twitter account, and that was pretty much it. And you know, slowly what ended up happening is we started getting this passion for creating like a fertile ground for people to want to come to Fantom. And I think that kind of lines up with the way that the foundation was thinking, which is we're not going to chuck a bunch of money at marketing and just have it be a flash in the pan. We want to create something that's sustainable. And I think it kind of lines up with the, you know, the developer incentive program. Like that was a home run, you know, create a good place for people to want to build. They will come, and it's not going to happen in the crypto time frame, but it's going to happen, you know. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of need to wrap their head around, is that Fantom's doing big things. And if you're willing to be patient, chill out, be a part of the community, find the love that we've all found for it, I think you'll be in for a good ride.
I just want to say, you actually took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say, you guys don't spend a lot of marketing, but hats off to you. You guys are marketing geniuses with that Fantom Incentive Developer Program. So I want to go into that a little bit more because I'm sure a lot of the people at this conference want to know how to participate in that. So could you guys actually explain first off the genesis of the Developer Incentive Program and how developers here working on projects that aren't necessarily like DEXs, because right now it just seems like, okay, if you run a DEX and you have TVL, you'll qualify for the program. But what about people that are doing things like for NFTs and gaming and whatnot? So I'd like to, so first off, somebody could answer the genesis of the developer incentive, and then the secondly is just, you know, how to participate in the incentive program.
Well, so the answer for the incentive program originally is actually twofold. So thing number one is it was a necessary evil to level the playing field, because every chain was coming out with a new liquidity program, everyone was incentivizing liquidity, and basically if you didn't have one, you weren't competing. So originally I was actually quite against it, because I've also been very vocal about how I feel about opportunistic liquidity. I mean, I've said it once, I'll say it again, they're liquidity locusts. They come into your farm.
I was against it too, until I found out about the program.
They come in, they feed, they destroy, they leave. And you know, one thing that we've always been focused at Fantom since day one is developer first. So it's creating an environment that is safe, is familiar, and is easy to use for devs. And that's why we made it a developer incentive program, because it's not how do we incentivize the people that are providing liquidity, it's how do we incentivize the developers to build products that drive the metrics we want. It's show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. So the lowest hanging fruit was just TVL, because it's a agreed upon measurement, it's all over the place. DeFi Llama has great stats on it, which is why we use them as our partner as well. But that's not the goal, you know, because not every project needs $1 billion in TVL. Not every project needs 200,000 daily active users. Some projects, you know, I used this example earlier the week where if you want to open a bakery on the corner of your block, you know, and you want to just sell bread, that doesn't have to one day be a franchise that IPOs and then lists on the stock market. It's fine if it is that, and it can be successful within its own metric. which is why we're looking at aggregators and aggregated volume. We're looking at NFTs and floor prices. We're looking at marketplaces and their volume. We're looking at games and their daily active users, and we're trying to drill that down to the point where it doesn't have to be huge numbers, but we want to incentivize you. And so along with that, and this isn't public yet, but I'll touch on it quickly as well, is we want to create a better environment for developers. So we're looking at insurance funds, we're looking at security developer incentive programs, we're looking at ways to create such a safe environment for devs that they feel, if something goes wrong, they have backing from the foundation. And I feel that's something that's missing in a lot of the current chains and solutions out there. But yeah, it all comes down to that developer-first mindset. That's who we want to focus on. That's whose lives we want to make easier, and that's what we're going to keep doing.
Michael, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just to add a little bit on to what Andre mentioned. It really comes down to the philosophy of, the purpose of the Fantom Foundation is to help grow and develop the ecosystem as much as we can. So working the core technology, working on the tool sets for developers, and with the incentive program, to encourage people to basically build on Fantom. We didn't structure the incentive program just to be like, here's like a bunch of like tokens, right? Or to pay projects just to listen to Fantom. We wanted them to build first, demonstrate that they have real technology, demonstrate that they have real users, and then just simply help accelerate the sort of growth that they're getting. Because I feel like with applications on Fantom, it's kind of like a win-win in that if the applications do well, then the chain does well because we get more users, we get more chain usage, which encourages more people to use the chain and the technology. And so that's in the end what the goal of the foundation is. And so, by helping out projects on Fantom, I think we're helping out the ecosystem as a whole. So that's also why we kind of did it.
Great. So let's talk about the future a little bit for Fantom. I mean, right now, I always kind of like to draw this comparison. People say to me, Harry, why should I pick Fantom? And I said, well, best way to describe it is if you were to compare Bitcoin to a cell phone network, it would be 1G. You would have Ethereum as a 2G network, and then Fantom would be a 450G network because it's that fast. And it's interoperable, and I always wanted to dispel the myth that Fantom is an Ethereum kill. It's actually an Ethereum helper, as Andre you've described before. It's more like a load balancer to help take a lot of the transaction load off of Ethereum. Fantom being so fast already, do you guys have any plans? I mean, it's always possible. Can you talk about some of or give us a little bit of preview of what you guys are working on for the future to make it go even faster?
Yeah, I can probably give a high level, and then Andre can probably give a much more technical explanation if he likes. So working kind of on a few things. So there's kind of the core consensus work, and then there's more of the middleware work. So on the core consensus work, we've got working on improving the performance of the underlying ABFT technology. We're working on things to do with minimizing the storage on chain, because that's a big issue at the moment, that the storage on chain is very, very high. So there's a variety of different techniques, like using fast sync, using other type of data proving methods that are inbuilt into Geth, implementing our own kind of data proving methods as well. It's something the developers are working on very, very hard right now, and hopefully should be coming out fairly shortly, so we can minimize the size of the directory for the validating nodes. And in terms of consensus as well, we're starting to do more research into sharding, because that's how I think we get horizontally scaling in the end. Because with ABFT consensus, yes, the fact that it's asynchronous means that you can process more transactions and have faster finality than, say, synchronous systems. But you still have the trade-off with the blockchain trilemma between security, decentralization, and speed, in that the more validators that you add to the network, the more messages that have to be exchanged between those validators in order to achieve that 2/3 + 1 consensus. So that ultimately, there's an upper bound to that. There's an upper bound to how much processing can actually be done on even an asynchronous network. So the way you solve that is well, I believe the way you solve that is sharding. So you can basically horizontally scale, just keep adding more computers, keep adding more computation in the network, and that's how we get a huge amount of users. Because I think there's a lot of interest in blockchains these days, but the limiting factor is the network performance itself, and that's why we're seeing on Ethereum. I remember Ethereum a few years ago was not very expensive to use, but now like doing a basic transaction can easily cost $10, $20, $30, hundreds of dollars like worth of ETH, and that's simply a function of supply and demand, right? So that's exactly what the gas price is. It's just a function of supply and demand. So if the price, people have to pay a lot to get their transaction through to prioritize it over others, and that means that the network can't really be used by normal people or people on a day-to-day basis, only by a very few. So we're working on the core consensus stuff. On the middleware stuff, we're working on a new virtual machine that's like register-based, that compiles bytecode in a more compressed manner, has like super instruction sets and a few other features as well that are kind of lacking in EVM. So the EVM, I think, was a great start, but it's kind of hasn't really changed much since it was first launched, I think in 2014 or 2015. So there's a lot of performance and security improvements that can be made on an EVM. So we're working on kind of like a new virtual machine, coupled with that, like a new compiler as well to that. And the aim is to make it as Solidity compatible as possible, because of course the developers have to be familiar with in the code and the language that they're already used to, so they can interact with that new virtual machine. So I think that's how we increase scalability dramatically, working on the middleware side of things, and of course on the core consensus as always. And the objective is just to keep building, because there's always more improvements that can be made.
I've got nothing to add on to that. Great setup. I actually think I'm going to dumb it down a little bit and go in the opposite direction, less technical. The important thing is dApps today are limited by throughput. You know, the things you could do on the early internet were limited. You could only do static images. You could only do originally plain text websites, because we simply didn't have the line throughput to handle anything more than that. And you know, eventually we kind of got to Flash player technology, and then eventually we got to video-based technology, but each one of those iterations were limited by the underlying hardware and software capabilities of that early internet. Now blockchain's at that exact same space. The reason why we only see a kind of set number of dApps right now is because that's all that's really possible to do with this underlying technology. As long as we keep pushing that baseline, and that is via sharding, that's via the FVM, I mean, even just those two changes alone gives us 10 to 100 times over our current throughput. And when we get to that, that's
Sorry, did you say 10 to 100 times more?
Well, even just with what those benchmarks we ran just with the storage changes on the EVM was already something like 20 or 40 times faster.
Yeah, well, I can't go too much into research, but a big problem with the EVM is to do specifically with two types of opcodes that you guys, if you're familiar with the EVM, you'll know what they are, like S-store and S-load. So basically like read and write operations on chain. The way that it's handled is very, very slow. It grows slower as the chain gets bigger. And so there's some like research being done in new storage mechanisms specifically to do with those opcodes that hopefully should make performance a lot better, because that's actually a big bottleneck when it comes to performance on the middleware side of things.
And I mean, those are base layer changes. Like we've got quite a lot more on that. So as an example, the current most limiting factor in Fantom Network's throughput is the EVM. If you just benchmark base transactions, sending and receiving FTM, our top benchmark was 23,000, I believe.
Yeah, it's a few tens of thousands account-to-account balance transactions.
Sorry, what was that number?
EVM.
23,000? What? 23,000?
Yeah, I think our last benchmark was around 23 or 33,000.
Yeah, I think the metrics, and maybe I'm saying them wrong, I think it was like across 7 nodes, it was like a few tens of thousands of account-to-account update transactions. So the important thing to know is that they're not EVM-based transactions, but the EVM-based transactions is unfortunately a lot less than that. Maybe a few hundred or 1,000 or a couple of thousand at most. And that's because the EVM has a number of scalability issues. That's why we're spending quite a bit of time focusing on that as well.
So you guys are creating this thing called the Fantom virtual machine. My mind is just blown right now. So it's going to be the new version, but it's going to be 100% Solidity compatible.
Yeah, well, the compiler will allow you to use the same Solidity and Viper you currently do, and we're working on making the data stores the same. But yeah, I mean, that was one of the core pitches we had since day one. That research has actually been going on since 2018. We haven't actually stopped it. There's just a lot more work to go in there, you know. That's why the current version of Fantom is our, you know, version 1. We already have the roadmap for version 2 all the way up to probably about 5.
Well, you guys heard it here first. There's going to be a new version of the Fantom virtual machine, so Fantom's going to be even faster.
Well, to be fair, it's in the original white paper, so it just shows you haven't read it, Harry.
Okay. I'll be honest, I haven't read any white papers. My friends read them, and then they tell me what to. Okay. So, so you touched a little bit on data storage. So as somebody that runs, you know, 6, we're going to probably announce a few more validator nodes to kind of help support the network, you know, Tomb Finance as well. The amount of storage that's being used on these validator nodes, I mean, it's incredible. I'm not complaining. But do you guys start to see, are you guys, you have a team that's focused, you know, more on like the storage problem right now, just because it's growing so fast, like these validator nodes, and it's not really simple to deploy a validator node. You can't just spin up a Docker image and, you know, have all the data. So are you guys, give us a little bit of preview of what you guys are doing on that side in terms of helping to manage the storage, because you guys are growing so fast. Like there's so much data now being created on the blockchain.
Yeah, so there's like a core group of consensus developers that are working on the storage problem as well. That's like the #1 priority task as well. Actually, there's actually a huge backlog of work to be done in general in terms of like what we want to achieve on the consensus side. Actually, so much work that it's hard to find developers who you know, have the kind of knowledge, because it's a bit niche. Because the developers have to have like a solid understanding of Geth, they have a solid understanding of the EVM, good understanding of like consensus, particularly consensus that's asynchronous based. So we found a few additional developers, you know, this year, but we haven't actually found that many. But the problem to do with storage is the fact that the validator nodes are currently recording every single interaction or transaction that happens on chain. So that's something that's not necessarily necessary in order to validate transactions. You only need a part of that data. And the data storage problem that we're having at the moment is actually is a bit of a good problem to have, because the reason why it's growing so much is because, you know, people are using the chain, but obviously it's a big problem. So implementing, for example, something like fast sync that is already inbuilt into Geth that Ethereum uses is already a big step, because fast sync basically allows you to run like a pruned version of the chain, which allows you to still confirm transactions, which is exactly what the M of validator does, but it doesn't need to do any more computation than that. If you're running what's known as an archive node, where you have the full history of the chain, particularly if you're doing any transactions to do with like historical data, that's something that still needs to be run. But that can be run separately as like read-only nodes and dedicated storage. But for validators, you know, they can use a pruned version of the system. So fast sync, there's other data pruning methods that the developers have actually just like started to test out right now. So yeah, it's definitely a problem, but it's been worked on. So we'll see how the updates go after it's progressed from like the testnet stage.
And just one more to add into that is our data snapshots. So because in something like Ethereum or Bitcoin, the rule of a transaction being accepted as true is the longest chain. So because you always have to prove the longest chain, you have to have the entire network from block 1 all the way to current block. Fantom finality means that we don't. We can take a snapshot of the current root events at any time and then truncate everything before that. So snapshotting is something that we've had in the pipeline for quite a long time. It's just difficult technically to implement, but that also means, you know, you start basically having light clients that can automatically boot up.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask some other questions since we're kind of teeing up here towards the end. So Andre, this question is for you. And I've always wondered,
the price, even though it's something that you really, really don't like to talk about, sometimes the price is kind of like the measure of the barometer of like the health of a blockchain and the ecosystem. I just want to know, I think some people want to know too, why don't you like to talk about the price? Is it because you just want to focus on the technology side? Is it?
So, first off, apologies for my language, but like since day one, our rule has been we're a shitcoin. And we don't want to forget that, because as long as we remember that, it means we acknowledge that we have to work harder, we have to do more work, we have to put in more legwork to prove to people that we're not. So as soon as there was an interesting study actually a while back with PhD students, because they put so much of their time and energy into getting their PhD that when they then accomplish their PhD, they feel empty. They go into deep depression because that thing they were chasing all the time, they've reached, and then they kind of stagnate. They don't know what to do after that. So we can't acknowledge it. We can't acknowledge the success. We can't acknowledge the increase. We have to keep remembering that, again, and apologies for my language, that we are a shitcoin. And you know, that keeps the drive, that keeps us hungry, that keeps us pushing. And I think that in one part is important. But the other thing that's also important is scams also go up. And there are good projects out there that just have bad tokenomics and they go down. It's not a comment on the project. So, you know, like we're working just as hard now as we were working when in the bear market, when that price was just consistently going down. So price is a very short-term focused thing. So we don't like making that a metric at all in the organization. What's important is that we remember that we have to keep working, we have to keep staying hungry, and we have to keep pushing, because we have a technological goal we want to reach, not a financial one.
It's a great answer. Thanks for answering that. So, yeah, that was deep. Wow.
Well, if I could just add on what like Andre talked about, you know, one of the things that really excites me about Fantom is that I think there's always like more work to be done in terms of like more technology, like in terms of the technology goals, in terms of like the goals in like growing the ecosystem. There's actually like an endless amount of work, it seems. And so, you know, I think personally, I think it's very, very dangerous to always to like rest on your laurels or say like, oh, we've achieved some sort of success, or people think that you've achieved some sort of success and say, okay, that's good, you know, oh, I'm like so great or so smart or whatever, like nonsense like that, right? Because the moment that you start getting arrogant and start thinking that way is the moment you start failing, in my experience, because I've seen that a lot in my life, right? And people who are kind of like that, they start not doing well and they start falling behind. And so the mentality we should always have, you know, well, Andre put it one way, I'll kind of put it in the way that, you know, we still have a lot to do, and we always need to keep pushing and know that, you know, we don't know everything. We need to keep learning, and we need to keep working with and employing like smarter people within us. And I think if we keep having that mentality, I think we will be okay in the end. So that's kind of like the mentality that I always try and tell people in Fantom and outside of Fantom, that there's always like more to be done, and we just got to keep building, because we honestly just had the same strategy from the beginning, which is just to keep building, just to keep building, just to keep building, and researching and developing. So that's the mentality that I think I will always have.
You know, I just want to really thank you guys for being who you guys are, working together and staying on your vision. It's because of you guys that we're all here today, that I even had the opportunity to develop something from the other world and really, really contribute. Like for me, it's kind of strange. I like to think of Fantom as like my extended family. Sometimes it's the dysfunctional family, but I believe all of us, there's two types of people in this world. People that if they make a lot of money, they either become much better or they become much worse. I'd like to think that all of us have actually become better because of Fantom. And we're not only kickstarting, you know, Fantom's, I think, revolution in developing applications, but I think the entire blockchain ecosystem is going to look at us as kind of like a model for how to build, you know, blockchain businesses kind of going forward. So I just want to thank you guys, continue building, keep doing what you guys do, and the community and everybody, especially myself, thanks you and thank you guys for supporting and creating such an amazing platform so that we could even have an event like this. So I think, guys, give these guys a round of applause. They really, really deserve it. Andre, can you just say Fantom Pump for me just once? I've never heard you say it.
You know there's no way in hell that's happening.
Okay, that's it. We can open it up for, we got about 2.5 minutes, so we'll open it up for some Q&A. So if there's a lady with a mic, where is she? So no questions about Coinbase or price, please. Okay.
Well, unless they're directed at Harry, then it's fine.
I would just ask Andre. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Hey everyone. First of all, big fans. Thank you for all that you've done for us. But my question is, what can the foundation do to help founders kind of reach that next step with their project, where they've heard about Fantom, they've heard about the great tech, they came, threw some code together, hit a few million TVL, don't know what to do next. Is there any thoughts of like a mentorship program, incubator type thing to kind of help with that?
So so the question is, does Fantom have any, guidance towards founders for TVL and whatnot? So I can tell you what we're doing. In Abu Dhabi here, we just took like a 10-year lease. We're building almost kind of like a Y Combinator and like for Fantom here in Abu Dhabi. So outside of Fantom itself, we're definitely investing heavily. And where's Stellian? Is Stellian here? He's not here, but Stellian from Hyperchain Capital is one of the first investors in Fantom. They're also supporting. Any of you that are here in GameFi that are doing development for games, please talk to him. So this conference is definitely one of the places. Please come talk to us. I mean, from our end, that's what we're doing here. Is we're pretty much like a Fantom ecosystem fund that we've set up for both our hedge funds. So happy to chat with you a little bit afterwards. Tell us about your project. That's why we're here.
Thank you.
You guys?
Yeah, just one thing to add on that. Like right now, it's a very informal process. So, we'll just jump into a Telegram group and we'll have chats about what we can do together, etc. We are actually currently in the process of formalizing how it works and like creating different tracks for people to actually get onto. Harry is doing a lot of work in that field. To answer directly, it's a very informal process right now, but we're setting that sort of up as the next big leg that we are focusing on in terms of developer ecosystem, trainee programs, and having people that can handle a little bit more, because DeFi is scary.
Yeah, we've got time for I think one more question.
Only one more?
Just one more.
All right. So
don't make it a 4-part question, just one question.
I have a question for Andre. So Andre, you were talking earlier about how like Lachesis is a superior technology. I guess the implication was that it's a superior iteration to Bitcoin. And the focus really was on throughput and like how much data the chain can process. My question is that if that's the case, why does Bitcoin have tens of thousands of nodes and Fantom currently only have, I think, roughly 50? Because at the end of the day, this isn't just, the entire purpose of the revolution is decentralization, right? And if that's not a fundamental issue to the chain, to the technology itself, how long-term do you plan on scaling it?
So thing number one is we throttled it from day one. We didn't want an influx of nodes because it makes it a lot more difficult if anything goes wrong. It's new technology, it has to happen slow. I mean, even Bitcoin, it has over 10,000 nodes now. It didn't when it started. It had 5. So the first thing is we needed to find a way that we can ensure that we don't get to that level quickly. So for the people that have been paying attention to the on-chain governance, every so often we do a decrease in the validator requirement. So, originally it was 3.175 million. That went down to 1.5. There's a new one now down to 500K. And we keep pushing it down because our goal target is around 1,000 to 2,500 validators eventually. But we're just taking a very cautious process to it because we don't want to do too much too fast. Like a main proponent for us has always been taking things rather overly cautious than under. But now the side the side answer to that as well is that, remember, there's always a trade-off when it comes to the trilemma. Like, there's no this is better. If there was a complete this is better, then Bitcoin, Ethereum, etc., whatever, would have jumped onto the same technology. So your trade-off is always going to be decentralization versus speed and security. Now, security, different story, because that's actually more of a civil mechanism with our proof of stake, so I don't necessarily need to go into that right now, but we need to get to more nodes, and that is something that we do over time. But that speed always means you're not going to have that same level of decentralization. It's always going to be less because you want more speed. But to answer the question from a technical point of view, our earmark is between 1,000 and 2,500 nodes. It can technically go higher than that, but because the consensus is reliant on the communication network or the gossip layer itself, it means the more you add in there, you are going to tap into your throughput mentality. But at the same time, you know, that's why we have other improvements like the FVM and sharding and roll-up sharding and those kinds of things. So, you know, it's a process.
Guess I can't ask anything more, so thank you.
Great. Awesome.
Guys, a big round of applause for our panelists, please. All right, time's up.
Thank you, Harry.
Oh, you're welcome, Andre. You guys may